Hello my dear friends and welcome back. This time we are starting a new series in which we will explore some treasure games, the games of Judit Polgar. And I will start with a very interesting game that she played at the World Chess Championships under 16 in the year of 1986. Yes, so she was a teenager back then and she was playing white. So white, Judit Polgar against Isabel Kientzler. Okay, so let's see what is so special about this game. They played a Sicilian with a Najdorf, so the open Sicilian, and then let's see. Okay, so the bishop retreats to b3, so it doesn't get attacked, and then she will play f4 because at some point she would like to push f5 and attack the pawn on e6. Okay, we have a little pawn chain in here and white will try to open up this diagonal to reach black's king once black gets castled. Okay, so queen to c7. Oh, suddenly f5. I like it when it's so fast. Okay, so pawn to f5 directly, and now let's see how black responded to this attack on e6. Why black had to push the pawn to e5, and in this way the d5 squares remains an outpost for white, and that is so exciting. Now the knight has to go away from the center, but again white is having 4 controls on d5. So basically black will never be able to push that pawn, and so it remains a weak pawn on d6. Okay, so knight to d7, developing it toward c5. From c5 it would attack for the second time the pawn on e4, and white is very active in developing the rest of the pieces. And finally, infiltrating with a bishop on d5 is a very good idea. It's very nice. And it is so interesting because now black will not be able to push the pawn from b7. It's pinned. And what happens if black would try to take the bishop? Well, it's not possible because this is what happens next. White will take with the knight, attacking the queen and the bishop twice. So even if black will try to have a check in here, white will attack the queen with the pawn supported by the knight. And so the queen has to move and black will be losing the bishop. Even if the queen goes back to d8, white has 2 attacks in there. And so look, there is this nice idea of taking with a knight check, king h8, and then discovered check, and black loses the queen also. So nice variation. Good, so black cannot take on d5, therefore he will she plays knight to b6. This is interesting. She plays knight to b6, and probably she wants to take the bishop with the other knight. And so white needs to decide what she's gonna do, and this is such an interesting move again because white will give up the pair of bishops and even trade the good bishop, but what is so important here is the fact that white is eliminating one of black's defenders from the castle and also a defender of d5. So basically in this position white is dominating the whole position with a bishop on d5, and if black will try to trade that bishop, then a knight will be installed in there. Okay, so white continues very aggressively, pushing the pawn up to g4 with the intent of pushing it up to g5 and then to g6. Okay, so maybe this explains why black plays king to h8 to unpin the pawn from f7. Okay, so white does not neglect developing the rest of the pieces like the queen and the castle. Okay, long castle to bring the other rook into play on the d file, doubled with the queen, targeting the weak pawn on d6 as we already said. Black also doubles on the semi-open file toward white's king on the c file. And finally the attack is coming with the pawns supported by the pieces from behind. And now the bishop to b3, a clever retreat, and now this exposes the d6 pawn. White is threatening to take that, and black will defend it. And finally pawn to f6. Now it's time to break the castle. Okay, they trade the pawns and white takes the central pawn instead. And black decides to retreat the bishop. Okay, it's time for white to continue going forward. Okay, this is the same throughout the whole game. White just goes up, it just goes forward. Okay, bishop to c6, and now it's time, since the queen is defending f7 for the second time. Okay, white is attacking it twice, black is defending it twice. So now the other rook gets developed, attacking on f7. So always developing with a tempo, with an attack. So black simplifies the position by trading the queens and then is trying to send the knight away, but actually black is losing the pawn on f7. So the purpose of h6, I think, was to create a space for the king to go up, so it wouldn't be forced to go to g8, favoring a discovered check. So bishop to e6, attacking the rook and threatening bishop f5 check at some point. Rook c7, bishop f5 check, king g8. Can you see that black's king becomes more and more exposed? Because white is bringing new forces in the attack. Now black is also losing the second pawn. Okay, good. Knight to g4, knight c4, and fantastic. Rook to d3, threatening to slide over to the king side. Rook h3 check. Okay, so bishop e8, probably wanting to defend after bringing the bishop on f7, defend that diagonal. So rook h3, king g8. And it's time for the other knight to come into play on the outpost, knight d5 attacking the rook. Now I want you to notice this, rook to d7, it's tricky because obviously white can't take it because of checkmate. Okay, so no blunder is allowed. Okay, so actually white just checks on e6, and if black would stop the check with a bishop, I think white can simply take the rook. Maybe even knight f6 is to be considered, and see if there's any checkmate there. But anyways, here black played rook to f7, and followed by, at move number 34, a very nice checkmate. So can you see the king is all locked in its castle, the rook is pinned, and finally the knight comes on e7 with a checkmate. Wow, how harmoniously white's pieces have worked together to accomplish such a beautiful goal. Okay, so my dear friends, I hope that you enjoyed this game, and I cannot wait to show you more games in the same series of Judith's Treasure games.